All right, Mustangs, let's talk about FERPA. Here are some things you need to know. So all schools need to ensure that we are following FERPA compliance. So in this presentation, I'm going to try to help raise awareness, talk about how FERPA applies to you, go over some rights, protections, and exceptions to the rules, talk about choosing compliant vendors. This is, in general, training all school employees, talk about how we can implement compliant policies and procedures, talk about what our procedures are at Memorial and in the Sioux Falls School District, talk about encrypted files and emails, and other prevention tools. So what is FERPA, first of all? FERPA is Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. The purpose is to protect student confidentiality, student privacy, and student education records. Parents are granted rights to all student info. Those rights then are transferred to the student when they turn 18. So students after turning 18 can determine whether or not their parents are allowed access to their information. At Memorial, all of our students are less than 18, so parents are granted rights to their students' educational records. FERPA prevents the spread of personally identifiable information without permission and also reviews educational records and requests to alter them. So any educational records are things that like transcripts, information about the student, health records, things like that. And then the PII information or the personal information is something like home address, cell phone number, age, and other things that fall into that category. So some ways to stay vigilant as an educator. Anytime you're getting rid of student records, make sure you just shred them. There's no reason to bring those to the trash when you can just shred them. 2, make sure any vendors that we are using are not using our student data. So making sure the vendors we use are FERPA compliant, which as a district, our main vendors we use, we have made sure that they are FERPA compliant. The free vendors or like free apps that you choose to use in your classroom, they often cost us no money, but sometimes use data mining. So just being aware that they are not asking students for too much information and we aren't providing any information that we would need parental consent to release. Other things like who you release information to, make sure that we're only releasing information to parents or guardians, and then the students if they are 18 plus. If you witness something, that's different than if you read about it. So for example, if you witness a fight in the hallway, you're able to discuss that because it's something you witnessed. But as soon as you put it into writing and share it with like the administrative team is no longer able to discuss that with anyone else since it is something that they read about, making it a confidential document. Really make sure that you are following FERPA on social media. So if you have students who are not meant to be photographed, make sure you are not doing that. Covering faces, making sure that you're not posting any information about students, personal or educational, things like that. Just making sure that we are protecting the rights of our students and making sure that you watch your email messages. So like I mentioned earlier, encrypted email or files, confidentiality, really just don't put it into writing if you don't want it to accidentally be leaked. There are a lot of times when emails could be leaked. So making sure we stay vigilant in all those different ways. So FERPA in the digital age is a lot different than when FERPA was first created. So nowadays we do a lot of digital record keeping. Teachers are using a lot of social media and free sites or apps. So as a result, students generate enormous amounts of sensitive electronic data about themselves every day, not all of which is clearly protected by federal law, which includes students' full names, dates of birth, home addresses, as well as other sensitive information like health records, special ed referrals, and in some cases, biometric data such as fingerprints or facial scans. So these things our students are generating but aren't protected by federal law. So it is our duty as educators to make sure that our digital record keeping is safe and secure. Our social media and the websites we choose to use in our classroom are safe and secure and not asking too much information about our students. And same with any free educational apps. Like I said on the last screen, sometimes they're free, but then they are actually doing data mining on our students. So just being wary of those free educational things. Ferpa and school recording or surveillance. Schools can have surveillance cameras in the hallways and classrooms. We need to make sure we have a policy regarding the purpose of the video surveillance, who will have access to the stored files and how long the files will be stored, how we will destruct the files, and what uses the files will be put to. So making sure we have those appropriate policies. All cameras must be in plain view areas such as hallways, classrooms, the gym, outside. They can't be in any locker rooms or restrooms, anywhere that privacy is generally assumed. And we need to inform students and parents about all the cameras. So just letting students and parents know you will be recorded, but that the recordings will only be used for school-related incidences. And then while you can use audio recordings, you have to tell the people who you're recording that they're being recorded. So it's just safer to not have audio recording in the hallways as well. When it comes to SROs, law enforcement, or threat assessment teams, law enforcement are considered a school official if they are an employee of the school or district. SROs are considered school officials if the school or district has outsourced the function of providing safety and security for the school to the SROs. And then the threat assessment teams are considered school officials if the situation being assessed falls under a FERPA health or safety emergency exception. So what that means is that these people are allowed to have access to student data and information since they are school officials, depending on the situation and why they would be needing it. Exceptions to FERPA. So if we need to protect the health or safety of students or other persons in connection with an emergency, for instance, an epidemic disease outbreak or a campus shooting, then student privacy is less protected. If the Department of Homeland Security or its ICE Bureau, they can have access to student information, especially like student exchange or visitor information, or if a student is overstaying their visa, more specifically in the college setting there. And anytime someone comes to the school with a valid court order or subpoena, then they have the rights to the information that they're asking for. FERPA enforcement. How can we enforce FERPA guidelines in our school? If they are not being enforced, people can, parents or students can file a formal complaint to the Department of Ed. The Secretary of Ed then must take action to enforce FERPA guidelines in the school. FERPA must work effectively and efficiently to try to resolve all complaints in a short amount of time. All complaints will not result in a formal investigation, so that's something to keep in mind. At times, they might just be acting as an intermediary or providing resolution assistance. Most complaints involve isolated incidents and of inadvertent or accidental disclosures of student education records, or PII. So most complaints, the school acted incidentally, and often the solution is just to have the school improve its policies, practices, and security controls to help prevent future incidents. Just making sure all of our staff is aware of our policies. Data destruction. Some data, like transcripts, will be retained for life so that students can have access to them whenever they need it. But some information can only be retained for a certain amount of time, and some will be destroyed immediately after graduation. Making sure that we understand that deleting may not be enough. We might need to clear the data which is using software designed to just clear all of the files from a computer, purging the data, making data unreadable, or destroying the data, disrupting the data by making it unusable. And we just need to make sure to follow best practices whenever we are destroying private information. So not just throwing things away, but shredding them, and not just deleting things from computers, but truly clearing, purging, or destroying all of that information. So at Memorial and in the Sioux Falls School District, we recognize that all data created by students, teachers, and staff related to students will be considered personally identifying information, which is protected by FERPA. PII includes specific identifiers such as a name, address, or student number, or any information alone or combined that will allow someone to identify a certain student with reasonable clarity. So we have written agreements with every third-party vendor or service that we use. We ensure that the provider uses the information for authorized purposes only. Our policies prevent disclosure of protected student information to any other third parties. Our policy maintains that student data collected by the provider is under the direct control of the district, and it requires the provider to observe state and federal laws for use, breach, or breach of personal identification information. When a provider requires the users to accept the provider's standard terms of service agreement, the district will review that to ensure the provider will protect PII before allowing use of service by staff or students. So again, just to recap, making sure that we are not releasing information to anyone besides the parents and the students, making sure that we are using third-party vendors that the district has approved, and are not releasing any information to free sites that would give away PII of our students, and destroying any data collected throughout the students' years immediately after graduation by purging, clearing, or destroying. Thanks, Memorial. Let's make sure we follow those guidelines to keep our students safe and protected.